Hi there. Thank you for your patience. We once again have just a little technical snafus trying to figure out, but welcome. This is a presentation about health at every size and how to incorporate health at every size into your curriculum. And I'm super excited about our panel today because we have three speakers. And I'll be speaking today about my efforts to incorporate health at every size into nutrition curriculum. And then we also have Dr. Patty Watkins, who will be presenting on strategies she's used to incorporate health at every size into her psychology curriculum. And then Dr. Rebecca Concepcion will be speaking about her efforts to incorporate health at every size into her kinesiology curriculum. So we're just really excited to be able to bring you a panel of speakers, and that does sort of explain the technical glitches. We have a few more speakers than we normally do, so a few more things to iron out, and my apologies on that. Again, this webinar is sponsored by the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health, and my name's Dawn Clifford, and I'm part of the Education Committee, and we've been putting together these webinars, trying to offer one every month on a new topic. And so before we get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about our speakers. I'll be speaking first. Again, my name's Dawn. I'm from California State University, Chico, and I'm an associate professor here, and I'm also the program director for the didactic program in dietetics. And in addition, I run a program called Fit You, and I'll be telling you more about that program as we move forward. And I teach classes in nutrition, counseling, and education, and also our careers courses and sometimes medical nutrition therapy. I'd like to tell you about our other two speakers. Dr. Patty Watkins is from Oregon State University in psychology, and I do need to look at my notes here, but she's developed and taught classes on women, weight and body image, and fat studies, and she'll be sharing that with you today, and has done research in that area as well in terms of weight bias and body image and physical activity, and also some pedagogy as well. Rebecca Concepcion is from St. Mary's College in Moraga, California, and she teaches courses in health promotion and health at every size. And again, she's with the kinesiology department. So each speaker can tell you a little bit more about themselves, but let's get started. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint slides. So just give me a second. Okay, so hopefully you can view my PowerPoint slides. And as I go through these slides, again, what we're going to be doing today is, here are the speakers that I just mentioned and introduced. And here's our plan. We have about 90 minutes today to speak. We probably won't take up that entire time. And if you need to go at the 60-minute marker, the great news is the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health has all of these webinars on their website. So we record them all and then post them for anybody to view. So if you miss the end of this presentation, you can always visit the HAESEdu website a few days later, where you'll see the video and you can catch the end of the video. But each of us is going to speak about our personal experience incorporating health at every size into our curriculum. We'll talk about topics we cover in different courses, assignment ideas, assigned reading ideas, and hopefully, and we'll also share resources. And we are happy to post our slides, and we'll be doing that after the presentation, so that you can visit the HAESEdu link, visit the HAESEdu webinars link, and then you should see this as a YouTube video as well as our PowerPoints. I'm also happy to share my syllabus, and I'm assuming Rebecca and Patty will be happy to do so as well, and any other resources you'd like, so just ask. I did enable the Q&A, so hopefully that's working, and you can ask questions there at any point, and we'll answer those at the end. And we're each going to speak for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll be happy to take your questions at the end. So again, each of us will be speaking about things we're doing in the classroom and then also things we're doing outside of the classroom, and ending with challenges we faced and also personal triumphs in incorporating health at every size into the curriculum. So before we get started, it's important to just make sure we're all on the same page. So defining health at every size real quickly. You know, if this is a new concept for you, we have webinars already posted on HAESEdu that you can view to give you a better understanding of the concept. But real quickly, health at every size is about weight inclusivity, and so we use the term weight neutral to describe accepting and respecting size diversity. It's also about health enhancement, so improving and providing equal access to information and services for all individuals of all sizes to promote human health and well-being for everyone. And then respectful care, so acknowledging our biases and working to end weight discrimination, weight stigma, and weight bias. And then health at every size is also about eating intuitively, so eating in a way that promotes flexibility and individualized eating based on hunger and satiety, considering nutritional needs as well, and also pleasure. And then helping our clients adopt life-enhancing movement, so joyful physical activity for all sizes that's just fun and matches their abilities, and helping them discover what is just really fun for them. So that's health at every size in a nutshell. And now I'm going to tell you how I have, quote unquote, hazed our department. I haven't done it alone, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been doing here at Chico State. So I'd like to introduce you to my partner in crime, Dr. Michelle Morris, and she and I have been working for the last 5 or 6 years together in looking at our curriculum and figuring out ways we can teach students health at every size. And we have been speaking together and doing research together, and so you'll hear me refer to Michelle throughout this presentation because a lot of the things that I've done in collaboration with her. And then there are a few things we've done on our own as well. But I just had to give a shout out to Michelle before I got started. So in the classroom, there are just so many opportunities to talk about health at every size, and I teach nutrition counseling and education, and so I have my students in this class read intuitive eating as part of the course, and they have to journal after each chapter, and I ask them a specific question about the chapter to respond to. And I find this is a great way to first expose students to health at every size. While it definitely is incomplete in terms of the whole health at every size picture, I find that it's just a concept that nutrition students really can understand and get excited about, and it's basically easier to swallow for them than more of the advanced health at every size concepts. And so I just find it's a great way to get them interested and excited about it. And then in our community nutrition class, they have a few lectures on health at every size, and also read at least one research paper in that area. Our advanced human nutrition class is an advanced metabolism course, a continuation basically from biochemistry with specifics to macro and micronutrients. And our department chair, Dr. Katie Silliman, teaches that course and does a great job incorporating information about blanking on the term, basically the science behind weight. And she talks about hormones and neurotransmitters. She talks about set point theory. And so students really begin to understand that the energy balance equation doesn't hold up. And so we appreciate her really teaching students from the scientific side of things those concepts. And then we're really excited about this general education course we were able to start on our campus called Health at Every Size. I started this class a few years ago, and it's been a lot of fun. And I thought when I first developed the class, wow, I don't know if I can actually come up with enough curriculum for a whole 3-unit class. But this has actually been possible. And I've gone on and passed the class to other instructors who have done a great job, and I'll be telling you a little bit more about this class. So I'm just going to check in. It looks like everybody's still here. As you can imagine, giving webinars, you can't see your audience, so you just hope for the best. So let me tell you a little bit about NFSC 200, which is our GE course, Health at Every Size. And what's really exciting about this course is the rest of our university was very excited about the course. Our university went through a GE redo, you know, where we had to kind of create these pathways, and we created, you know, or I was part of the development of the health and wellness pathway, and we had to start naming some new courses that students could take that would satisfy these different requirements. And so this class satisfies the U.S. diversity and the writing intensive requirements. So basically students are trying to check off as many boxes as they can with GE courses, and what's great about this course is they get to check off 2 different boxes when they're taking this course. So I included a course description for you there that I'm not going to read, but basically just shows the student that this class has to do with size discrimination, cultural influences on body dissatisfaction, and physical activity and mindful eating. So it's a very popular course. It started off with 1 section of 20 students, and we now have 3 sections. And our writing intensive class has 30 students, and we have a non-writing intensive version of the class that has about 40 students and 2 sections of that. So we're basically hitting over 100 students each semester now with this course. And they come from a variety of majors, which is really exciting. In the course, here's just a list of topics that we cover. So we do an overview of health at every size, and then help them start off by teaching them how to read literature and kind of come from a critical eye to look at research, how it's done, how it's sometimes funded by the diet industry, and we, you know, go into those different limitations in weight science. And then we also do talk about weight science. Students don't have to have taken any courses before this, so they don't have any prereqs. They don't necessarily have any science background, such as physiology. So we talk about weight science in this course at a very, very basic level, just helping them understand, again, just that there are hormones and neurotransmitters that really make it so hard to lose weight and keep the weight off. And then we talk about negative side effects of dieting and present the research that's out on that topic. We talk about body image, and also that's where we also address culture, really fulfilling that U.S. diversity requirement. And we talk about eating disorders and bariatric surgery. We talk about exercise addiction when we're talking about eating disorders as well. And we talk about the Satter eating competence model as a way to address intuitive eating, but also address planning and preparing meals and snacks, and definitely students eat that stuff up, no pun intended, but they really are looking for, you know, how do I figure out what to eat on a typical day? So we find that Satter's model is useful when teaching about those contextual skills, planning and preparing meals, so that when you do get hungry, you're ready with a balance and a variety of foods. And then we also talk about childhood weight, childhood obesity, and we talk about mindfulness as an approach to life, but then also hone in on mindful eating specifically. We talk about intuitive exercise, social justice, fat politics, and then at the end we want to make sure that students are leaving this course having the tools that they need to be a HAES advocate if they choose to do so. So some unique class activities that we do in class is we have guest speakers, and I think that guest speakers are super important in these classes, because I know when I was teaching it, I kind of wondered, gosh, students maybe think I'm crazy. They maybe think I made this all up on my own. These concepts are so different from what they've heard. But when I got guest speakers going in the class, then they started to realize, oh, she's not the only one that thinks that. There are other people that believe that too. And so I had some local therapists in town, eating disorder therapists in town speak, and also a therapist at our counseling center, and a dietitian in town specializing in eating disorders as well. And I think that really helps. The other thing that I noticed really resulted in a shift in understanding and that paradigm shift that we speak of. What really played a role was the America the Beautiful 2 movie. And it's only because, I mean, it's a great movie and it, you know, addresses a lot of the concepts, but it really makes the concept legitimate in the eyes of a young adult. You know, if they made a whole movie about it, this really must be a topic. Again, the instructor isn't just making this up. Other people believe it, and oh my goodness, they have a whole movie about it. So I found that there was a big shift, paradigm shift occurring right around that week where I showed that movie. There's another movie, there's so many movies, and you'll hear from the other speakers about other great movies out there, and it's so hard to choose which one. This obesity is a government's business is a debate, obviously, because that's not something that I stand by, that statement, but it's a debate, and it's great, I think, to expose them to the controversy of this topic, and yeah, it just shows both sides, and so I think that's important. And then we also do a mindful eating experience in the classroom where I bring food and we go through smelling and savoring, as I'm sure many of you have tried something along those lines when you're doing education for others. And then when I taught the class, I did a joyful movement exercise where I had them complete a survey assessing their current mood, and then we went outside and we played ultimate frisbee. It was optional. If you didn't want to play ultimate frisbee, you could do something else, and then we came back inside and revisited that mood survey just to kind of get them in touch with that concept that physical activity can really alter mental state for the better. And then another activity we did in class that worked out really well was we used the NAFA Childhood Obesity Kit, which is the Fat Acceptance Organization, and they have this wonderful kit that talks through scenarios of children being stigmatized for their weight and has some great questions at the end of each scenario. So we were able to go through that as a class, and it was a real meaningful activity. And then out of class assignments, we have online journaling. I'd say is huge. Having your students do some journaling is really important, especially the first half of the semester. My class was very quiet and they were very uncomfortable speaking, and I did a lot of different things to try to fix that. They were just a quieter group, but they were telling me all sorts of things on their personal journals that were online. So I'd say having some sort of journaling opportunity for students is huge, because if they don't feel comfortable sharing in the class, they'll probably feel more comfortable writing about it. And then I had them write a letter to their editor. Basically, they had to go on a website, find an interesting article, blog post, either pro-HAES or anti-HAES, and write a comment at the bottom of the article. So they were only allowed to pick articles that had a place for commenting. They also had to go back to the article a few days later and see what other people had posted in terms of comments, and then reflect on, share with me the comment they provided, the article link, and then also other comment, summarize the other comments that were provided. We had them do an essay on body image and culture, and they each basically chose a culture to talk about and research, and found some really interesting studies, you know, that had been done in different cultures related to body image, and then present that to the class. And then I had them towards the end of the semester write a letter to either a friend or a family member who they felt was really stuck in that yo-yo dieting scenario, and just write from a place of compassion, but also educating that friend or family member on the concept. And then the last project, or one project that was turned in at the very end of the semester, is a social media video project where they had to put together videos that are basically images and words put on a screen to music, and they had to then take this 3-minute video that they created and share it either on Facebook or through email, and ask at least 10 of their friends to watch the video and then comment on the video. And then they had to summarize the comments they received in a paper at the end. And so I have a link here to one of the videos, and gosh, I'm afraid to mess anything up, so I think I'm gonna let you take a look at that on your own. But basically it's just words and images and music, and you can easily, there's lots of websites out there where you can, students can put these together, and they're very tech savvy, so they upload images and they write words across the images, and they end up creating a very dramatic, moving piece. So out of the classroom, we have we try to meet every 3 or 4 times a year, the Chico HAES think tank, and we got that idea when Dr. Linda Bacon invited us to the San Francisco Bay Area San Francisco Bay Area HAES think tank. And so Michelle and I came home and said, okay, we can have a think tank. So we meet a few times a year and just talk about ways we can be advocates within our community. Michelle started the Embodied Club, which is a student club in our department, and the student club is all about health at every size. And it's not a nutrition club. We really wanted to make it a multidisciplinary club and invite individuals from other departments. And what's wonderful is because we have 100 students going through our HAES class every semester, a lot of those students do get very passionate about becoming HAES advocates, and now they have a place to go when the class is over where they can continue being advocates. And then we also have the Embodied Club really run and organize that Love Everybody Week, which is our equivalent of the National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And they put together speakers and events and kind of lead the show along with Michelle as their faculty advisor. And then I run a program called Fit You, and I'll tell you more about Fit You, but basically it's a nutrition and counseling program on campus for Chico State students, and I train graduating seniors and graduate students in health at every size and motivational interviewing, and then they provide individual counseling sessions to students on campus. And when you sign up for Fit You, you get 8 appointments. You get 4 appointments with a nutrition mentor and 4 appointments with an exercise mentor. So I'll show you an image of that in just a second. And then other collaborations we've made on campus, we've connected with people at the rec center who are very much in favor of health at every size and want to be mindful of their signage at the rec center. They've really done a great job of working with us on that. And then the Gender and Sexuality Equity Center on campus, definitely been collaborating with them. The Diversity Office, Michelle, kudos to her. She has done so much to bring size diversity into the conversation of our diversity office, and they've been very accepting and receptive to that. And now Michelle is a diversity faculty officer on our campus, so it's really great that she can make even more of an influence in that position high up in the university. And then the counseling center, reaching out to our eating disorder therapists at our own counseling center has been wonderful, and they've been so supportive of everything we've been doing as well. This is a picture of our student body, our student club, Health at Every Size Club. They came up with their own name and voted on the word embodied for their student club name. And this is a little flyer they created for Weight Stigma Awareness Week. And I think it's cute because it has, the definition of weight stigma, and then at the bottom are these little things you can tear off. And they put these up in the bathroom so people could tear these little sayings off and keep them in their pockets for the day. On the lower right-hand side, you'll see Marilyn Wan, and she came to our campus for Love Everybody Week, and they and helped everybody make their own yay scale. And they just had such a wonderful time, and everybody was so excited about that fun craft. Here's another just embodied image. This is their Love Everybody Week flyer. So you can just kind of see a sprinkling of events that include a movie, a main speaker. We had Reagan Chastain last year, gave 2 amazing presentations on our campus and a dance workshop. And then we also have an eating disorder panel. And then you can see Marilyn Wan came and they made scales together. This is an image of the website for my Fit You program. And so again, this is just a nutrition and exercise counseling program for Chico State students. And I wanted to show you this link on the website because I think it has some useful wording if you wanted to kind of get a program like this going that really uses some of the Health at Every Size language to explain to students exactly what they're signing up for. You know, here are the different topics. You know, it's individualized in terms of, you know, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Here are some topics that typically come up for clients, and then to use some weight neutral language with those topics. And then we, of course, have clients that sign up that say, oh, I'm just really here because I want to lose weight. And so we have what Fit You is not on our website, so that we try to make it just as clear as possible what they are signing up for is, you know, a program that is geared towards this Health at Every Size concept. And so then the mentors have the fun challenge of trying to explain that to their clients and do it in a way that respects their autonomy. And for the most part, student clients are very receptive to the Health at Every Size concepts that are presented to them during their sessions. So as I wrap up, just some challenges and triumphs at Chico State. Some challenges have definitely been that students complain about receiving conflicting messages in the classroom at times. And so, of course, not all faculty have the same nutrition philosophies, and so there are, you know, they're receiving Health at Every Size messages in some classes and dieting messages in other classes. And I actually think that's really great that they receive conflicting messages. And so, because that's real life, and it also just really exposes them to both sides in a balanced manner so that they can make their own decision about what you know, resonates best for them. Some students complain now and then on our exit surveys about repetition of hearing non-diet concepts a lot in their classes, and I take that as a compliment, but I know that especially if a student of ours just isn't interested, isn't on board, doesn't agree with the concept, I could see how that could be kind of frustrating. And definitely we have students that go through our program and become these amazing HAES advocates, and we have students who go through our program who go on to work for diet companies. And so we definitely are not able to reach everyone in terms of that paradigm shift. But we try to show them that we just love and respect them no matter what they decide. And of course there is disagreement among faculty, and that's come up in conversations in the faculty meetings that are absolutely uncomfortable, just as everybody's experienced, but everybody's very civil to each other, and I work with a great group of individuals where we've been able to hash it out to the best of our ability, and at the end of the day just kind of agree to disagree and enjoy that freedom that we have, that we do get to decide what we teach in our own classes and just really respect each other to the best of our ability. And then also, yeah, students do express concern about not receiving enough diet curriculum. They're worried that they're going to go into their dietetic internships and that their preceptors aren't going to know anything about non-diet, and then they're not going to have learned the things they needed to learn about how to lose weight. And yeah, that absolutely happens. But I do, when I taught medical nutrition therapy, I taught them all the BMI categories. I told them to memorize them. I taught them all the body fat testing, you know, strategies. I taught them, you know, that whole lose a pound a week, 500 calorie deficit a week, or 500 calorie deficit a day equals 3,500, you know, calories, which equals a pound. And I teach them all that. And of course, I explain, you know, this isn't what I believe, but I have to teach you this in order for you to pass the RD exam, and in order for you to do well in your internship. So I certainly made an effort to teach those concepts in the textbook that I didn't agree with, just so that they had the knowledge they needed to pass the national board exam. Some triumphs on campus. I'm just really thrilled about this GE course because it has such a great reach and students are loving it, and it's been a fun class to teach, and I think created a lot of HAES advocates in our community who have gone on, like I said, to be part of the Embodied Club and officers in the Embodied Club. I'm also excited about Fit You. We've been doing that program. I started it with Dr. Linda Keeler, who is a kinesiology professor, and I think we started it 6 years ago. So it's been great. We only serve about 15 to 18 clients every semester, but the Fit You mentors learn a ton from becoming mentors, and they have to go through very vigorous motivational interviewing training before they're allowed to be mentors, and they express a lot of appreciation for the experience of working with real clients before they graduate. And then triumphs are finding allies on campus. There's so many great allies on campus in the health and community services department, in, like I mentioned, all the different organizations on campus. And so that's been great to just feel like you're not all alone in this, that you have a community. And like I said, Michelle being in leadership now as a faculty diversity officer, that's just amazing. And so all of the things she'll be able to do in that position. And then one thing that's fun about incorporating HAES on campus is that there are so many opportunities for research. And so we did use that first year of our Health at Every Size GE course and as a research study, and compared our findings of, we did pre and post testing each semester, and then compared those findings to another GE class that had a very small amount of Health at Every Size, and then also compared it to a group that was a traditionally taught class that had no Health at Every Size in it. And so that research has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Nutrition, Education, and Behavior, and we don't have a publication date on that. I'm guessing sometime in the next 6 months, hopefully. So it's a great way to do research and to teach at the same time. So now I'm going to pass the baton over to Dr. Patty Watkins. Again, she's from Oregon State, and she's going to talk about hazing psychology, what she's been able to do with her students. So it'll just take us a second to switch gears a little bit, and thanks for listening. All right, Patty, are you there?
I'm here. Is everybody else there?
And your slides are there. Yep, we have 103 people listening right now, so we're doing great. And I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone so that they don't hear my voice and they only hear your voice.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, well, welcome all 103 folks to our presentation today. And you're getting a view right now of lovely Oregon State University campus. And just to introduce myself a bit further, as soon as we make the slides come up, there we go. There we go, and there I am. I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I'm currently in the School of Psychological Science. And I did, however, during my 20 years now at Oregon State University, spend a number of years within the Women's Studies program. And that is where I had the opportunity to develop the classes Women, Weight, and Body Image, and more recently a Fat Studies class. And both of those are currently cross-listed between Women's Studies and Psychology, though I have many more psychology students enrolled in them now that I'm back in the School of Psychological Science full-time. So I will mostly be talking about what I do in those two classes, but I want to say also other courses that I teach, introductory psychology and abnormal psychology, I take the opportunity in those classes to integrate HAES principles and ideas, and I'll tell you in a few slides here why I do that and why I think that's necessary. So for those of you out there who are teaching psychology classes but don't have the opportunity to teach a full-on class in these concepts, hopefully some of what I say will be useful to you to integrate into your classes. And in fact, one of my colleagues is telling me that she's about to integrate Health at Every Size into her health psychology class this term. So, and my pictures, I like to include pictures of myself engaging in the joyful movement that is part of Health at Every Size. And I try to, throughout my classes, model my use of Health at Every Size concepts in my own life for students perhaps to pick up on. So as you can see, I love snorkeling and scuba diving and bicycling. Okay, so what I want to talk with you about today, first I'll give you a little rationale for teaching health at every size in psychology, and then share some of my content, what I do with the students in class, what I have them do for assignments, and then talk a little bit about the process of teaching this material and some of the challenges associated with this, and a little bit about how health at every size has extended beyond the classroom at Oregon State University. So, rationale. It seems that, sadly enough, weight bias is the status quo among college students today. And weight bias, although being widespread among college students, is more pronounced among students in behavioral health majors. And I've got a picture and a reference up there to a book by Ellen Glovsky, Wellness
Hey,
Not Weight.
Patty, this is Dawn. We
Yes?
just see your first slide, and we don't see the slide advancing.
Oh, okay.
Any guesses on that? Oh, now you're on a new slide.
Okay.
Should we go back?
You think you figured it out?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll mute myself again.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so there's my introduction and what I look like in my recreational activities and overview and, oops, in the down arrow, sorry, and the rationale now for teaching in psychology. So the book Wellness Not Weight has a couple of chapters, one by Rebecca and myself, and one by Dawn's colleague, Michelle Neiman-Morris, that summarizes some of the research around students in behavioral health majors having greater weight bias than those in other majors. And the same can be said for psychology students. I'm citing an article there that compared nursing students to psychology students in terms of their level of weight bias. And although the article was published in a nursing journal and the discussion centers on what to do with nursing students, it seemed that psychology students had the same level of weight bias as nursing students. Then another part of the rationale that I'll put up on this next slide is that much of the material, the textbooks in psychology, are weight-centric and weight-biased. And so I find myself addressing those, for instance, in my abnormal and introductory psychology classes. And I've got here some references for studies, content analysis studies that have been done that illustrate the weight centrism and weight bias. Esther Rothblum in 1999 examined abnormal psychology texts. There was a dissertation in 2000 that looked at introductory psychology. McHugh and Casardo more recently published a general review about weight bias in psychology as a field, including textbooks. And currently, my research assistant, Madison Gerber, and I are looking at psychology textbooks across our psychology curriculum. In all of our psychology classes, what kinds of messages are students getting from the textbooks? And I'll just give you an overview here with the themes that past studies have found and what we have noticed thus far in our early stages. Many of these books have illustrations of the headless fatties, the dehumanizing photos, one depicted here, or fat people engaging in stereotypic behavior such as eating cakes, ice cream, pizza. And another thing I found is that obesity is often miscategorized as an eating disorder. Weight is an unquestioned determinant of health. And when these books talk about causes of higher weight, the emphasis is on individual behavior. And there's blaming and shaming language. In fact, one book I looked at recently has an explicit statement about obese people causing a burden to the healthcare system. There's also information about dieting, that one should lose weight in order to enhance one's health. And even in books that talk about the biological, physiological barriers to sustain weight loss, nevertheless come back to the idea that but one should keep trying and lose weight for health. And in books like social psychology that talk about bias, have chapters about bias and discrimination, there's often not information about weight bias. And then when textbooks do talk about weight bias, what I'm finding is they talk about that should be a motivation for people to lose weight, so they will no longer be subject to discrimination, rather than putting the onus on the people who are engaging in the biased behavior. So that's a lot of the rationale for trying to integrate this material into psychology classes. So the challenge is to get people basically not to learn, as Gloria Steinem says, but to unlearn the weight-centric perspectives that they come in with. So letting go of that and being open-minded and considering a weight-neutral, weight-inclusive paradigm, such as health at every size. And yes, like this picture demonstrates, we want to flip the dominant paradigm on its head and present an alternative paradigm in health at every size. So some of the content that I use, I'll give you examples of each of these, but generally speaking, what I have learned with the influx of psychology students into what had originally been a women's studies class, that I need to tailor the readings to the discipline, because I had psychology students balking at readings that came from feminist journals or from the humanities or from sociology. Sad to say, there's a notion that psychology is the end-all be-all and not really open to interdisciplinary scholarship among our undergraduates. So I have integrated a lot of material from psychology and also public health, nutrition, and sports science. I have students with those majors and minors in my classes as well. So not that I've done away with the other material entirely, but I've made a point, and when I present these, I make a point of saying, here's somebody in your field presenting this perspective. So they seem to take to that better when they see it in their own literature. But I do use a combination. Since the course became cross-listed with psychology, I make a point of using a lot of quantitative data, because our students are socialized to think of the experimental method as the end-all, be-all research method, and they want to see numbers. But I intersperse those readings with qualitative and narrative reports. And on a slide later on, I have some student perspectives to illustrate how they take to that combination of readings. In terms of films, I have a series of films I use that highlight weight bias, question the traditional weight-based models of health, and also present positive images of fat people. And on that latter point, I try to do that in my PowerPoint presentations, not just in fat studies and women, weight, and body image, but in intro psych and abnormal psych. I try to use a diversity of images across gender, race, sexual orientation, and also in terms of body weight, shape, and size. Websites, I have students come in contact with websites associated with organizations that address weight bias and support HAES principles, but I also have them look at news reports or blogs or videos where these concepts come into contact with contemporary issues, popular culture, and I'll show you an example of one that I've come up recently. And sad to say that there are many, many examples. You never run out of examples of what's happening in the world in terms of a weight bias or the obesity crisis or weight loss messages. So here are some ideas, some of the things I do reading-wise. And in the Fat Studies class, I use as the main reading the Fat Studies Reader, depicted here by Esther Rothblum and Sandra Solovey. And this is an anthology that has sections. Well, the first section is on the historical and social construction of fat, a section on fat in health and medicine, a section on fatness as social inequity, sizeism in popular culture and literature, and the latter section on fat acceptance and fat activism. But in addition to that text, I do supplement that with journal articles. In my other class, Women, Weight, and Body Image, is pretty much solely journal articles and book chapters now. So here's what I touch on in terms of topics that the journal articles address. Weight bias as a system of oppression, as a social justice issue, and the prevalence, demographics, and across institutions. I have articles that illustrate weight bias in education, weight bias in medicine, weight bias in the media, weight bias in the family, and then the consequences of weight bias. And as a psychologist, I tend to emphasize the psychological consequences. Then I address the obesity paradox, that BMI is an inaccurate predictor of disease and mortality, and also that fitness is a better predictor of those things than fatness. And I rely, for instance, on Stephen Blair's work on fitness and fatness, and the Flegel 2013 article showing that overweight people had better health outcomes than normal weight people. So some of the things I do in that area. And then articles on weight loss interventions being ineffective. I've relied on Tracy Mann's, some of her reviews of the literature on that topic, and pointing out that she's a psychologist. And then some articles on the ethics of weight loss interventions. And finally, health at every size, and our articles that support the empirical effectiveness of that approach. Linda Bacon and Lucy Aframore's work in particular. So here is some other reading suggestions. There is actually a journal, a Fat Studies journal, that is ongoing that people can tap from for articles of this ilk. And then some special issues of the journal, Sexual Somotechnics, Narrative Inquiry, and Bioethics. So folks can investigate those with the links when you look at these PowerPoints at a later date. I will mention one reading in particular that I start the class off with, and that's Linda Bacon's article, Reflections on Fat Acceptance, Lessons Learned from Thin Privilege. And below that are some quotes that students have included, some things that they've said in their written assignments upon reading that article. And these are two quotes from students that were more so-called normal weight, and found that this article was really eye-opening in terms of them having been oblivious to thin privilege and how people of higher weights are treated. And those folks tend to want to become allies in terms of weight bias. And I find that the larger students in the class actually love these articles because they no longer feel so all alone, and they feel vindicated that this treatment isn't deserved, it's not their fault, and that it's society that should change rather than their weight. But I think that's a really important article to start off with. In terms of films, here's some of my greatest hits list, and at the top I've also got America the Beautiful that Dawn mentioned. And for many of these films here on the list, I've got links to trailers so folks can get a sense of what they're about. There are a couple that aren't out yet. Fatitude, I believe, a body positive documentary, is still in process, as is The Student Body, which is about mandatory BMI testing and reporting in schools. But the trailers alone, I've used the trailers for those as conversational points in class. My favorite is Weightless, which is about fat women scuba diving. And one of my students responded to that movie with, in her writing, "Scales are for fish, not people," which I thought was a great slogan. In terms of websites, here are some of the organizations that I have students investigate. And I'll mention that the Rudd Center on Weight Bias and Stigma has got a section there that has pictures of fat people engaged in normal everyday activity, non-stigmatizing pictures that you can draw from and use in your class PowerPoints and such. Also videos on weight bias, empirical articles are available, and lots of good stuff there. Teaching Tolerance is a site that has size diversity information and exercises to use in educational settings from kindergarten through college. And some of my students plan to be teachers, and have found some good exercises there that they talk about using in their future work. Here's an example of my contemporary issues websites. And you may have heard about the Biggest Loser, one of the contestants coming out in terms of the deleterious practices and effects of going through that television show. So we look at these things that come out in popular culture, and then there's actually a news interview that includes Judith Matz, the author of the Diet Survivor's Handbook, who does a great job at talking about health at every size ideas and the problems associated with weight loss approaches, and in particular, The Biggest Loser. So check that out. These are the assignments that I do. A lot of reading. It should be a writing intensive class. I haven't applied for that status at OSU, but they do reading reactions every week in both of the classes. And in-class writing, every class period, reactions to films or websites, things that we do in class. Sometimes I assign them the websites to go through each section and find things to talk about. And what they've spontaneous done in class, I'll say, well, come on up, show us, and pull up the website in class and have students go through and show their peers things that they found particularly interesting. The Women, Weight, and Body Image class does an autobiography relating the concepts to their own experience, and the Fat Studies class does activism projects. And here's a list of the activism projects that they've done in the past. And the students really get into them, and they love sharing this health at every size information with others. So these have been fun and interesting, and I think when the students need to share the information with other people, they learn it better and they come to embrace it more themselves. So I've enjoyed doing the activism projects and plan to do that again. So here are some of the student reactions to this curriculum. And in general, I pulled from the written assignments personal impacts and professional ideas, how to use the information professionally, and then they write about ways that they disseminate the course concepts apart from the assignments that have them do so. So we've already talked about they gaining a greater awareness and sensitivity to others' experiences, but I'll show you in this next slide somebody articulating all of these other personal impacts: better body self-acceptance, stop weighing oneself, less dieting, and changes in the kind of and the motivation for physical activity. So I'll just share with you, I'll read this one if you're not able to read the PowerPoint well out there. Health at every size has changed my life. I used to wake up every morning and weigh myself and get so angry when I didn't see the number I wanted to see. I used to work out hardcore just to lose weight. I wasn't really happy with my body or my life. I no longer exercise because I feel I have to. I exercise now to make me feel good. Working out doesn't have to be going to the gym. Working out can be snowboarding, hiking, playing basketball. I've stopped weighing myself every morning. I put the scale in the storage closet so I don't have to look at it. I even encourage my roommate to stop weighing herself too. I will never go on another diet. The material in this class has taught me I can be happy with my body just the way it is. So I'm going to skip over the next couple of slides that reiterate those points, but I love the students' voices and the way they articulate what they've gotten from the class. Here's an example of the professional impacts and from a psychology student, and she comes out in terms of how she'd like to work with her clients and not be of the mindset, or rather to be of the mindset that every person is unique and there are other markers of health at every size, and so not to just push weight loss on a client. And this is important because the American Psychological Association, I believe, is still in the process of coming up with guidelines for clinicians about dealing with overweight and obese clients that I believe will be those of the weight-centric model. So I like that students training to be psychologists are thinking in different ways. Other professions talking about what to do as a teacher or as a lawyer and how to integrate these health at every size into those professions. And what I love is students sharing with other people about the class. And I've actually had students I've had a couple of mothers, a sister, and a couple of boyfriends brought to class because they're so excited to share the information with other people in their lives. And that outside of class, they're more vocal. I love this, that somebody used to just let things slide when they heard weight bias comments and talk about trying to lose weight. But now she says, now I see myself actively trying to explain to friends about how weight doesn't matter. As long as they are living a healthy life, they shouldn't be concerned with their looks. Their body is their body, and they should start accepting it more. So a little bit about the process. I want to finish up here soon and turn things over to Rebecca. But I have found myself from my time in women's studies using feminist pedagogy in terms of teaching these two classes. And so we emphasize social justice, try to minimize the hierarchy in the class. I tell the students that people learn from each other, and I learn from them. And I'm kind of like a point guard who disseminates some information to them, and they can take and run with it. We have a lot of class discussion, more discussion time versus lecture, and allow feelings into the classroom, that it's okay for people to have strong feelings about the material that we're presenting. So I have to say that's a little hard for psychology students who've been socialized in lectures all their psychology career. They're typically taking my classes in spring of their senior year, so it takes a while for them to warm up to that. Things to know about presenting this material: anticipating and addressing misconceptions and resistance. I did actually have a student write in her first in-class writing, "I hate fat people. I'm only taking this class because I need the upper division credits." And sadly, I do get people in there who aren't inherently interested in the topic. Part of what I've done to prevent that kind of thing is to have, for fat studies, women's studies prerequisite class, so they have a better sense of systems of oppression before they enter the class. This is something that's up for debate about instructor self-disclosing and talking explicitly about body size or personal eating disorder history. And I personally do self-disclose in an educational kind of way. And I do that because I try to present myself as a coping model versus somebody who's got internalized weight bias and in body image distress now, or engaging in dieting, and to let them know that I was where they were at an earlier point in my life, and that I'm no longer, and that you can and do exercise for fun and health and social versus just burning calories. So I do talk about myself. And I also have students self-reflect, which is another pedagogical technique that not everybody who teaches this material does. So I'll throw those out for the interest of time now for you to think about. But I'll point out the two references at the bottom of this PowerPoint. One is an article, both of them are in the Fat Studies Journal, and one is an article that I wrote with a graduate student, and Amy Farrell, who teaches fat studies at Dickinson College. And we present differing views on that, and we've also polled people teaching fat studies and health at every size. So that's an article you can look to for more on that. And also an article by Erin Cameron in the latest issue of the Fat Studies Journal. And she and Connie Russell have a book coming out, an edited book, The Fat Pedagogy Reader, that those of you interested in teaching this should keep an eye out for. Lots of chapters, lots of voices talking about these issues. And pedagogy, these are some student expressions of how it went for them. And I will say that I've not had a student complain that the class has left them worse off. Certainly there's some initial distress when people come into contact with how unfair I've been treated, or that some of what we talked about is painful because they or somebody they know has had an eating disorder. But in the long run, people seem to leave the class in a better state. And like Dawn, I'm about to empirically evaluate my fat studies class, not just the qualitative data you've seen, but some quantitative measures on body image and weight bias to see what that looks like. Additional challenges, Dawn talked about students facing weight-centric views in other classes, so I'll skip over that. But one thing I do want to be sure to mention is addressing the idea of healthism, that we don't want students to be thinking that, for instance, okay, the fit fat people are better than the unfit fat people. As long as you're healthy, then that's good, and if you're not healthy, that's bad. What I try to communicate is that people of all shapes and sizes and all levels of health or fitness are still deserving of basic human rights and respect, and then not judging. And so this is, I've got a citation to one article that I share along this lines that actually is somewhat critical of the health at every size model, and not that I agree with all of the criticisms, but I think it's good for them to read that and think about it. Last but not least, beyond the classroom at OSU, the Active Minds chapter, that organization that looks at stigma around mental health issues on college campuses and aims to educate and prevent mental illnesses in college populations, has begun integrating health at every size information, especially during the National Eating Disorders Awareness Week events. And I should also say Active Minds was a sponsor bringing Linda Bacon to campus last spring. A student in the class posting HAES information on the Nutrition Club Facebook. A graduate student who was in my class. The classes are upper division / grad classes. And one of the doctoral students who was in the class is currently doing his dissertation on identifying strategies to make fitness facilities more welcoming and accessible for fat people. And I also have support from OSU's Difference, Power, and Discrimination program, and through them I do training in weight bias and health at every size to faculty and graduate teaching assistants. And last but not least, other successes are students who've come into contact with this information at OSU and have gone on to teach it themselves. Debbie Christel on the faculty at West Virginia University teaching fat studies, and Rebecca Concepcion, who I'm about to turn you over to, teaching here at St. Mary's College of California, her Health at Every Size class. So thank you for your attention and my contact information if you have more questions later.
All right, thank you, Patty. This is Rebecca, and I'm just going to take a moment and pull up my slides here. All right. And Dawn, I'm sure you'll come on and let me know if these aren't working out. So a little introduction about myself. I actually have an undergrad degree in exercise physiology, and after that degree worked as a weight loss counselor, a fitness counselor or advisor, worked with athletes and the general public on fitness and losing weight. And I really, I really enjoyed it. I was very gung-ho about that. At a certain point, I was motivated to continue on with my education and was very interested in exercise psychology and motivation and helping people, stay healthy, essentially. So I, at that time, went to Oregon State and met Patty and my advisor, Vicki Ebick, who allowed me to research physical activity in various populations who weren't commonly studied. I also studied public health at that time, and so that's a little bit about my background. But it was really studying sport and exercise psychology and learning more about some of the issues that Health at Every Size brings up that got me interested in this. So I currently teach in the Department of Kinesiology here at St. Mary's College. Previous to coming here, I did teach a general nutrition course that was a lower division course. And then here at St. Mary's, I have an introduction to public health at a lower division level and 2 upper division courses, typically with juniors and seniors, one in community health and one in health promotion programs. And I bring up the levels of those classes primarily because as you think about your own classes, it's important to, as you probably all well know, to think about how accessible different readings and materials are. And so as I talk about these classes, that'll be germane moving forward. So with outside of the kinesiology curriculum, I teach a January term course. It's a 4-week course, and it is not necessarily discipline specific, so professors can teach in any area of interest that they want. It is a requirement of all St. Mary's College students to take a course every year in January term, and so this is my 2nd year of teaching Health at Every Size. And this is a lower division course, so I have often a fair amount of freshmen, but then upper class students as well. And they are from all different majors across the college. And I have that as my first point there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the January term course because that's really where I am able to spend a lot of time talking about health at every size, size diversity, fat activism, all in this 4-week course. So the text that I'm using in this course is Linda Bacon's Health at Every Size book, which works really well at these all levels of students. And then started last year with this class, including a book by Abigail Segui, What's Wrong with Fat? And she's a sociologist, and she has an examination of the obesity crisis from multiple sociological frames, so the medical frame, sociocultural, personal responsibility, and she really breaks down why we where this idea of obesity crisis comes from. And ultimately, through her analysis and research and looking at other sources, comes to this conclusion that us using that terminology is very problematic in terms of bullying and weight discrimination, misdiagnosis, people not accessing health care because of all the stigma that comes with it. So I've found it it's a complex book. It's not quite as accessible as Linda Bacon's book, but it gives them some tools to analyze messages, and so I love it for that. And obviously it's focused very much on what we're talking about in this January term course. So I will get more about into the assignments for that class later, but in my other kinesiology courses where I do not have the opportunity to spend the whole class talking about health at every size, some of the goals I have with kinesiology majors is trying to ask them what they think they're saying when they talk about obesity epidemic, and bring forth literature that talks about health independent of weight, and really ask them to deconstruct that and think about what kinds of behaviors might be influential in people's body weight, but also what other physiological factors, what sociological factors, what economic factors might come into play in people's body weight. We also discuss the problems with the BMI measure, and many students understand that, and yet they haven't necessarily used that as a way to analyze research that they're reading or literature, or to critique, right? They kind of just accept it fairly broadly. I have on this slide a couple of articles that I've used to help demonstrate that there is health independent of body weight, and Patty mentioned the Glovsky book. There's a chapter in there by Paul Ernstberger that does a very nice job really examining that, the biomedical rationale. And then there is a second chapter there that I also like by Sawyer et al. That focuses on the benefits of physical activity, and that, as Patty has already mentioned, physical activity seems to be a better predictor of health. And so trying to tease out activity and weight as the automatic predictor. And Patty talked a little bit about self-disclosure, and I don't think I necessarily do a lot about that per se, but I do introduce some assumptions I've made in my past along the way based on body shape and size, and how, because those assumptions were challenged, particularly in a road race, thinking I would catch somebody in a road race ahead of me who was shorter and rounder than I was, and I just could never catch that woman. So I tried to model kind of my own exposure and my own questioning. Again, this was before being introduced to health at every size model, but that that these ideas may be really challenging for students, and to invite them to struggle with these concepts moving forward. Other curricular goals and maybe the ways I go about those are, some of the literature around the problems with dieting, body image issues, eating disorders. I like to introduce some of the muscle dysmorphia research that actually is a way to help bring men into the conversation a little bit more. And so the idea that because of trying to obtain a certain body ideal, we see some clinical or preclinical kinds of eating disorder behavior, supplement or substance abuse, and impacts on people's social interactions because of this body ideal, and maybe dieting behaviors that go with it. We examine the efficacies of diet and the aforementioned Bacon and Aframore article, looking at that paradigm. And then a more recent publication by Casaza et al. That was published in the New England Journal of Medicine on some of the myths and presumptions about obesity, and it looks at myths around dieting, and so we are able to look and talk about that. Again, we take a look from a sociocultural perspective at what are the media messages for thinness, and I like to bring in some of the more recent ways that different people are trying to challenge that. And you may have heard of Lamely, the average doll, and the image there I have is of a student, elementary student, who they did a little study showing the doll to some kids and what were their reactions and how much they liked these dolls, that they look real or they look like their sister, and maybe how important those messages are and those approaches are for changing those media messages. There is a lot out now on Photoshop exposés, and students are happily bringing those to me and showing me and bringing to the class images of really bad Photoshop pictures. So we start to challenge reality based on the way media is sending those to us, and it allows students to maybe think more broadly about what is really possible, and what are really our goals in the way we eat and be active. Another article that has been well received because of its qualitative nature is this Pinna's article published in the Eating Disorders Journal, and it examines an intervention health program for kids, middle schoolers, and it examines some of the negative outcomes and how some students became eating disordered as a result of a weight-based health program. So this is a really great article to include in any of the health classes that I use, not just the Health at Every Size class. It lets us kind of be aware that even with best intentions, we might be causing more harm. Other curricular goals include the idea of body diversity and multiple influences on body size and shape. And I have used, it's a little bit older, frontline production called Fat. I really like this video. I think it still resonates even though it's a few years old now. It examines eating disordered conditions. It looks at the media. It features an obese, by BMI standards, triathlete named Dave Alexander. It features his physician speaking about how he's been tested and is clearly fit and fat. Stephen Blair, that Patty mentioned, also talks on there about body diversity. Kelly Brownell from Yale, and the Rudd Institute talks about the social environment. It's just a great overview of all sides of this question, and really points out that people come in different sizes and shapes, and we accept that in terms of height, and we need to maybe broaden our ideas about that in terms of weight. Another expose that comes from the New York Times Magazine is called Bodies of Work. That came out in 2008, and I was teaching that general nutrition course at that time. And it features 7 different elite athletes and includes their image, some body size measures, calorie intake, but also feats of physical abilities. And it really, especially for my kinesiology majors, helps them understand that different bodies have different skills and talents, and of course I also ask them to think about these two athletes, if they were clothed and walking down the street, what would be some of the assumptions made about them if you did not know they were elite athletes? And so trying to, as I needed to do years ago, challenge my assumptions about body size and shape. Again, this does focus on people who are very fit in various ways, and doesn't maybe address fat activism in and of itself. So when I'm introducing health at every size concepts, I often start at a place that might be closer to something that they've already understood, and try to move more into the social justice elements that that we talk about. And that brings me to my next slide. So social justice and fat activism, and these are just a couple of examples of videos and places that you're going to see this. I also at St. Mary's College try to tie this into the Lasallian. We are a Lasallian school, and it really fits nicely with three of our core principles, which include respect for all, inclusivity, and social justice. And I do try to connect students with these social justice mission at the school, but also through fat activism. And you may have heard of Joy Nash and her Fat Rant, and she has several other videos, and she was featured in a popular program called the Mindy Project, and having this discussion with that character about her weight. A more recent woman who is doing some fat activism through art is Haley Morris Cafaro, I believe is how you pronounce that, and she is doing a photography expose, taking pictures of people's reactions to her, and putting that together in the Watcher's book. And so I think these are great accessible ways to present this and to have discussions around fat activism, and separate out a little bit of the health component, that people have inherent value regardless of size, shape, and other kinds of isms that they are more commonly have been taught about, right, and understand. So in terms of some of the challenges that I encounter, I think that you'll see these are similar across Dawn's and Patty's in my presentations. It's really common in kinesiology to focus on weight as a disease or excess weight. And so I've had, suggesting this course to colleagues, some just really not understand it. At the same time, they've been open to the conversations, and I've had some of them tell me that they've brought in these concepts to their own classes a little bit more. Many of our subdisciplines in kinesiology do focus on how to get the best out of an athlete and how to enhance athletic performance. So talking about these concepts for people who are not athletic is different for them. Our students generally have athletic backgrounds and have been socialized into training, intense training, restrictive eating for performance, and have an unknowing, as a group, thin privilege or able-bodiedism. In fact, maybe in some cases, elite able-bodyism. And so they are challenged by this idea. And they may also misinterpret the HAES message, and they imagine that that means, I can eat anything I want, I don't have to be active, and that's not really the HAES message. And Dawn and Patty, have eloquently, kind of gone over the HAES message, but they initially think that's what we're inviting. And of course, I want to reiterate a little bit about what Patty said, is that does promote a focus on health versus weight, but may promote this concept of healthism. And so I do make sure that we are talking about fat activism and human rights and basic respect and access for all. some of the solutions for conveying this message on campus has been, for me, partnering across disciplines and finding like-minded people on the campus. So across faculty, in women's studies, I'm lucky to have a colleague on this campus, Elena Escalera, from the Department of Psychology, who also researches and does activism in this area, and I'm fortunate to have that right here on my own campus. Other areas include social justice programs, pre-law programs, sociology, as I mentioned, the What's Wrong with Fat is a sociological perspective. And then the Women's Resource Center, health and wellness centers doing Love Your Body Week, as they do on most campus. And on this campus, the Counseling and Psychological Services does use the HAES approach with a weekly women's eating disorder, addressing eating disorder group. I also like to bring in TED Talks, like probably most of us do, and these are a couple of resources. Again, depending on your discipline, I know coming from when I'm working with a lot of allied health science students in my upper division classes and kinese majors, that sometimes the neuroscientists might be more received, and people might be open to that message over the poet, Shane Kazan, and that's a very cool TED Talk as well. And then more recently, I've learned about Jess Baker, who is a blogger and a body love activist. That's her image there, and her TED Talk. And I think that's really great. I think it's good to have younger role models like Jess Baker and Shane speaking about these issues. I think students connect with that more. Also in kinesiology, I've used Jamie Oliver's TED Talk, and he is the naked chef from England who looks at school lunches here. I have seen images of him showing weight bias and weight discrimination, but his more current talks really ask us to examine the foods that are available to kids and families, and so I have used that. In terms of assignments and activities, I've had my HAES students do cross-cultural interviews on weight, food, body image, and speak about those back to the class as a presentation. I've had them keep a fullness and hunger log that is presented in Bacon. And then their final assignment is really kind of their bigger project, is critiquing some social institutions' message on obesity. So whether it's education, the government, medical messaging, media, and then to rewrite that message or address how they're going to change that to align more with HAES. These are some quotes from my students who, during the studying of HAES and basically connecting to understanding how their body works and social justice issues as weight discrimination. And at the end of my last year's class, these are some of the quotes from students who kind of just asked them to summarize their experience and their thinking at this point at the end of the class. And again, as Patty mentioned, people are coming out feeling, a lot more positive about of what they're learning. And so that concludes my portion of the talk. And I do want to thank Dawn Clifford and the association for inviting me to have this conversation with you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. And we did go our full 90 minutes, even though we started a few minutes late and had a few tech glitches along the way. I appreciate you all for hanging in there with us. Something that happened during Patty's talk was that my computer just randomly logged me out of this program, and then I logged back in, and now the Q&A function doesn't work anymore. So I am so sorry about that. Actually, we really are going to look at getting a different webinar system, because this one is, we've had some challenges. I do believe we can use the chat function. So if you'd like to send questions via the chat function, I know we're totally out of time, but I would like to give at least 5 minutes to answer questions. I'd also like to give you my email address, which is declifford@csuchico.edu. That's D as in Dawn, E as in Elizabeth, and then Clifford, CLIFFORD, at csuchico.edu, csuchico.edu. And you can email me questions and I can forward them to the speaker that you wanted to ask. And as I said as well, we will post the slides on the ASDA webinars link so that you can get access to all 3 sets of slides and our syllabi, and as well as this video will be posted on YouTube. I also want to mention too, before we take a few questions, that our next webinar next month will be by Erin Cameron, who Patty mentioned in her presentation, and it's going to be a continuation in terms of topic. She's also going to speak about health at every size in education, and she's going to speak more about pedagogy and her research that she's done on HAES pedagogy. So that'll be a really great talk, and I set it up so that you could see the link and the information for her webinar in February on this webinar system. So I hope you see that, but who knows. So hopefully you'll join us in February for that as well. And at this point, Patty and Rebecca, I wanted to check in with you, see if you had any pieces you wanted to add or questions you wanted to ask each other. Or
I think we're open to audience questions.
Okay.
If you have some.
I'm not sure if the chat's on. Nobody's typing anything. But did you want to speak any more about self-disclosure and faculty members, when teaching, offering? I loved, Rebecca, your story, because I also have skeletons in my closet, and sharing that and how it could help the process for students. One thing I can share about that is that I didn't share a lot personally, but unfortunately it's just because I don't have a lot to share in terms of my own body image and dieting. I just don't have that history, and so I actually felt like that was somewhat of a hindrance in getting students to open up. I felt like if I had had a story like that, that students would have been more willing to speak up in class. Like I said, they were very vocal on their journal entries, but not as vocal in class. And I wondered what you all think of that and what your experience has been.
I had the same issue with students pouring their hearts out in their writing assignments and then being less forthcoming and talking about their personal experiences in class. And I do think my sharing mine does open the gateway for them. I mean, part of the feminist pedagogy is trying to be transformative and to have them not just learn about this material from a distance, but to actually incorporate it into their own lives and change their ways of being for better, hopefully. And then I did have people begin to talk in class. And one thing I do at the beginning is have rules of the feminist classroom, and about being respectful and about recognizing that people are different in here, and when you can disagree but not in disrespectful language. And I do that. Actually, we have a diversity statement that I use in my syllabus, and in my intro and abnormal psych classes I especially emphasize ableism and recognizing that a lot of people have mental health issues. The person sitting next to you may have one, somebody's mother may have one, you may have one. So let's be respectful in our disclosures and responses to people's disclosures.
Great.
I could add to that a little bit. I think
Hey, Rebecca, before you do, I just want to let you know your screen share, you have to turn that off, because right now we can't see your two faces.
All right, so I can't
hear you. So
okay.
All
Is that it?
Heard everything Patty said, but we couldn't see her face. And I think there's a way you can turn off the screen.
Are we there?
There you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Hi.
I think it's, I'm mindful of, especially in the classes that aren't about HAES, when I'm integrating it into other classes, that we talk about that same kind of respect around these issues, because weight discrimination is prevalent with my students, and just in general, to let them know that they are going to be seeing images, we're going to be talking about these things, to be respectful about the issues that are coming up. Again, I have a lot of students who are student athletes or former athletes, and who experience a lot of physical privilege. So I think it's important to set the tone around this, as
create a safe space in your classroom. Where
and maybe say, you will see some discrimination occur in some of these videos, so it's and ask them to maybe identify why that would be problematic and where that might occur.
Mm-hmm. I actually, one of the student quotes I skipped over was from a fat student who was worried initially about classroom discussions, but in the end he said it was handled respectfully, and that people either to let go of their weight bias, or at least kept it to themselves if they had it, but the classroom discussions were safe, and that was all good. In the article in the Fat Studies Journal about teaching fat studies, some instructors' articles that I referenced are concerned about students having this topic rekindling eating disorders or upsetting them in some other manner. And I have had one student talk with me about how that was happening, and I didn't have to do a lot. She herself decided to go to the Student Counseling Center and to work with a therapist in conjunction with what she was learning in class. But she didn't see the class as traumatizing or bad, just that it brought up some things that she wanted some more support in dealing with. But I'm a psychologist teaching this class, and people of many disciplines, especially fat studies, maybe teaching it and not feel as equipped to handle when students disclose about their psychological distress. So that's one of the things that's kind of, it's an empirical question and up for debate as to how to handle it. That's why I'm real curious to see the results of body image and other psychological variables as a function of fat studies, to see, I hope to verify that people are feeling better, not worse, as a function of the class.
Great. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, I think we should go ahead and turn this off, just because we are well over our time. And thank you so much to Patty and Rebecca for sharing today. I should mention that they are in the same room together, though Patty is at Oregon State and Rebecca is at St. Mary's College. Patty came down to visit Rebecca, so that's why they're in the same room together, which made it a little less complicated for all three of us.
She's actually my guest speaker here too, so they'll great to share her expertise.
Yes, it is all about the guest speakers. How wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, and Patty and Rebecca, you all stay on the line, but I'll go ahead and hit the stop broadcasting button, and we just are so glad you joined us. We hope you got out of this what you were hoping to get out. And join us next month for more webinar on HAES in education.